Hello, guys. This is Dr. Subramanian. Thank you so much for joining for another live session. I have a very, very interesting guest for this session. His name is Dr. Subramanian Swaminathan. He's my mentor. He was my mentor during my infectious disease training during my general medicine. And he's a chief director in infectious disease department in global hospitals in Chennai. So in our channel, we have not interviewed actually a doctor from Chennai so far. We have always been from a US standpoint. So I thought I'll just bring him on board to see what is the prospects over there in India compared to here in US, so that I can pitch in what I'm seeing over here. So that will be a collaborative effort to educate everybody regarding this third wave of COVID. Without any delay, let me invite Dr. Subra. Sir, thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely a pleasure. Always nice talking to you.
So just a small tidbit to the audience, when Dr. Subra is rounding with us as a senior resident, எங்களுக்குலாம் அப்படியே வந்து கனாபனான ஆடும் ஐயோ எல்லா இன்ஃபர்மேஷன் தெரியுமா
இதெல்லாம் would answer. இதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப would answer. இதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப would answer. But go on anyway.
Oh my God, he was such a pleasure to work with, and you must have seen him in all this NDTV channels and interviews these days. He's been very busy with the COVID awareness. Right from actually when our channel started like 18 months ago, he has been like extremely busy. And obviously everybody knows that, third wave is coming up as well. So let me start with this simple question, sir. What is the current situation in Chennai right now?
Number of infections is going up very, very fast. அதாவது இப்போ இன்ஃபெக்ஷன் நம்பர்ஸ் எடுத்துட்டோம்னா இப்போ நிறைய பேருக்கு தொற்று வருது, நிறைய பேருக்கு ஜுரம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு வீட்லயே இருக்காங்க. The problem is the number of diagnosed infections is not that many, simply because most people are not going for a PCR test because everybody is under the impression that it's mild, and it's true. But numbers coming to the hospital has gone up. In fact, more and more hospitals are seeing significant surges in number of cases. If enga hospital வந்து கிட்டத்தட்ட 40% of the patients that we have today are all COVID related.
So the general opinion is that it is very mild, that will not require hospitalization. Has that changed?
என்கிட்ட அதை பத்தி யாருமே சொல்லலை. எனக்கு கோவிட் வரும்போது மைல்டாம இருக்கிற மாதிரி எனக்கு தோணவே இல்லை. நாய்பட்ட பாடுதான். Seriously, I had it.
Even with this Omicron variant.
Yeah, I had it New Year's Eve and that weekend, and then for the next 1 week, I couldn't go to work. I mean, mild, honestly, I don't know. அவ்வளோ முதுகு வலி, அவ்வளோ ஜுரம். நான் டெங்குவா இருக்குமான்னு முதல்ல டெங்குக்கு தான் செக் பண்ணி பார்த்தேன்.
Right.
And I mean, obviously at that time இது ஒமைக்ரானா இருக்கும்ங்கிறது பத்தி யோசிக்கல. ஏன்னா அவ்வளவு தூரம் இருமல் சளிங்கிறதே முதல்ல இல்லை. பட் இருமல் சளி வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் சரி அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு பிசிஆர்லாம் நம்புறதா இல்லைன்னு சொல்லிட்டு நேரா போய் சிடி ஸ்கேன் பண்ணி பார்த்தேன். கிளியரா கோவிடோட சேஞ்சஸ் தெரியுது.
Is that right? Okay.
Very minimal, but clearly COVID related changes. Those typical, peripheral hazy opacities that you see.
Being okay, sir, now?
I mean, the cough is still there. It's still a misery. My wife also had it very bad. I wouldn't like சோஃபாலேருந்து டைனிங் டேபிள் வரதுக்குள்ள கொலாப்ஸ் ஆகிடுற மாதிரி ஒரு ஃபீலிங் இருந்தது. So, but remember, since I didn't require oxygen, it's still mild. I'm having more and more people calling me and telling me that they're absolutely miserable. The number of phone calls and messages that I get saying, "Sir, how is this mild? I'm completely miserable." And I know quite a few of my colleagues have also been mildly miserable. So
let me ask you this. So even I think general thought process is, okay, you know what? I'm going to be miserable for 1 week. I'll be at home. As long as I don't require oxygen, as long as I don't require, I'm okay. But 40% hospitalization, it looks like they may need some supportive measures. Like they cannot be managed at home.
Let me explain. In that, of course, my situation is a little different because we've had very good response from the general public to our hospital with regards to COVID. We are kind of known for our COVID work. During the first wave and the second wave, we really worked very hard. During the first wave, our ventilator survival was 55%, all comers. So, if for a country like India, 55% survival on a ventilator is very good. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. Exactly. So we were actually very comfortable putting patients on vent because we were aggressively proning them. We were one of the very few hospitals which was proning up to 5 to 10 times. On average, 5. Some people we went up to 10 times and all that.
I just wanted to let the audience know that the proning when the patient on ventilator is not easy.
Absolutely. We've had patients who had bilateral chest tubes on a ventilator and multiple lines coming out of them and then proning them. Oh my God, it's
Wow.
not easy at all.
Salute to global
Yeah,
hospitals.
my critical care guys, I work with a brilliant team. See, although I can claim to be the team leader, I'm more ceremonial than anything else. I work with a brilliant group of people and very, very committed and hardworking kind of guys. People who I'm very proud to be associated with. So
Right.
obviously there is a little bit of a bias in terms of referral. So our numbers go up a little earlier than most of the hospitals. See, right now, what I can tell you is that we have 7 HFNC machines which we have accumulated over the last 1.5 years, and we've also
What's that?
7 high flow nasal cannula machines,
HFNC.
and and we've also rented 3. 7 are in use currently. So so basically that is not even including the people who are just on oxygen, not on HFNC. Fortunately, nobody on vent as yet. I have a couple on NIV, I have 7 on HFNC, and I have quite a few on oxygen. So what people
for our audience can explain NIV, HDFC, and
absolutely. Absolutely. If somebody develops severe COVID, obviously in the beginning stage they'll only need a small amount of oxygen. But as the oxygen need keeps increasing, the mask cannot provide that, because even in the mask with the bag, you can only give about 15 liters per minute. Beyond 15 liters, it's not possible to support it that way. Earlier, we used to put such patients on ventilators, but we know for COVID, avoiding ventilators is sometimes a reasonably good idea. So one option is to go for the high flow nasal cannula. Yes, this is great because we can go up to 60 to 80 liters per minute. But the problem is it sucks oxygen like nobody's business. And that's one of the problems that we had in the second wave, because oxygen availability became a big problem. Right. So for every HFNC machine that I run, I can probably put, for one HFNC machine, I can put maybe 6 to 7 ventilators. The same amount of oxygen can be used by 6 to 7 ventilators. So you have a choice of either running 6 to 7 ventilators or one HFNC machine. So when you start having very difficult questions like that, it's a problem. Fortunately, during the second wave also, we had steady supply of oxygen. Tamil Nadu was definitely in a better place, and we had certain good partners and good people to back us up.
Right now, like 7 people are actually requiring more oxygen than actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not just actually. So, exactly. I have a couple on NIV because they have underlying lung disease and things like that, because of which BiPAP or CPAP is a better option. But I have at least 7 people on HFNC, and I'm praying that none of them go on to ventilator.
So these are not with any significant medical problems.
Oh, no. All of them are significantly sick. So there are only 2 types of people who get sick. So as of right now, one is unvaccinated. I have quite a few, unfortunately, unvaccinated people. It's amazing. Now all the unvaccinated people in the community are being found out, and they're all coming to the hospital, not doing very well. So the proportion, like Bombay, they just published data. They showed that of people in hospital on oxygen, about 95% of them are unvaccinated. So for those people who are unvaccinated, Omicron is not good news.
Not good news.
Omicron is pretty bad, and I'm sure that's the kind of situation that you're having there as well.
Same thing.
The other group of people that we are seeing are people who are older with significant medical comorbidities, people who are on dialysis and things like that, where the response to vaccination may not be great. I have had a couple of organ transplant recipients, dialysis patients, extreme elderly with multiple comorbidities. Those kind of patients progress. But the number one category would be unvaccinated for whatever reason.
So, any deaths, sir? Any deaths so far?
We have had deaths, but they are not directly attributable to COVID. One was a person who came in with a massive MI with COVID, meaning he was admitted for massive MI, and he did undergo angioplasty or whatever it is, but it was too bad. But other than that, see, we had a patient with a complex neurological problem, somebody with Parkinson's plus kind of thing, and then had COVID. So obviously that tipped him over, and he passed away. So yes, most of the deaths so far with COVID have all been in, partly at least, maybe the trigger was the COVID. Trigger was the COVID, but these are all people who are already sick to begin with. But now we are starting to worry about the unvaccinated who may not be that sick to start with, and therefore that could be concerning. But the next few days will tell us.
So I thought not being vaccinated is a big problem only here in US.
Well, see, in Tamil Nadu at least, there was an unfortunate setback to the vaccination program due to the death of a prominent person, somebody
Right.
who really believed in the vaccine program
Right.
and things like that.
Hmm.
It was, I mean, I felt gutted because this was a good person with
Yes.
whose heart was in the right place,
Right.
and he wanted to do the right thing.
Right.
I believe a lot of us felt it as a personal loss rather than a societal loss. Somebody who went over and above to do the right thing for the community kind of person. But anyway, that kind of set the situation in the back foot. And the second thing is that the change of guard midway through last year also caused a lot of changes and things like that. But the new government has done pretty, substantial work.
Right.
They are aggressively going. You can see them sitting outside temples and markets and places like that, where they are trying to set up counters and asking people to take the vaccine. அதாவது மார்க்கெட்ல கூவி கூவி விற்கிற மாதிரி, so they are working as hard as possible.
I've seen that.
Yeah, so I mean, see, they're doing as best as they can. They are putting their weight behind the vaccination program. They are telling everybody. They are showing by example that it's a good idea. I haven't heard any of the people in the political spectrum in Tamil Nadu at least talking against the COVID program or the vaccination program, which is good to see.
Right.
Because in certain other places, there has been a lot of unnecessary chatter.
Yes.
Like one of our neighboring states, somebody said this whole COVID thing is a government conspiracy and things like that. A head of a party of that particular
At least
state.
in India, it's subtle, sir. Here it is very, very open.
Of course. Yeah, that is true. That is true. See, but I'll say this. I will say that our system is also to blame to some extent. See, in Patna, they had a major medical conference. End of December, and promptly Nalanda Medical College, the major medical college over there, and all the doctors over there, everybody developed COVID. See, I mean, we knew there was a wave coming. It was just on the come. And to have physical meetings like that, before we start blaming others, if we don't set our house in order, then what we see sounds very disingenuous.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think that reflects very badly on all of us.
Absolutely. So some other main questions everybody's asking me is that how about kids, children in this Omicron? Please tell me your opinions.
Well, my wife and I fell sick with Omicron, New Year's Eve and the week there. My younger one did get symptoms. My younger one is 5, and she threw up one morning and she was feeling lousy. But 24 hours later, she was running around perfectly fine. Unfortunately for the two of us, it did not end that well. The saga continues. I'm still munching on clouds to suppress cough. So what I can say is we are still kind of miserable. But having said that, yes, we are seeing a lot of children coming to the hospital with febrile illness. But the good news is it's almost unheard of for them to require hospitalization unless they are a special situation child. Like we have our transplant patients. We have a lot of children who have undergone liver transplant. So them we are very, very careful. Children who are undergoing cancer chemotherapy or some primary immunodeficiency, things like dialysis maybe.
Those asthma?
Not so bad. Not unless it's a severely uncontrolled asthma. We are not seeing that. Because, childhood asthma is not very uncommon in this part of the world. It's fairly common. It's fairly common. But we are not seeing that becoming a major issue. So for the most part, although we do have the bandwidth to admit and take care of children with COVID, we have admitted once or twice. For the most part, we are sending children home with the parents. The primary problem as far as severity is going to be in the adults. For children, it's going to be more of a nuisance value. What it is that children tend to become amplification points in the community because they're not going to sit at home. They're going to play with the neighbor kids and whatnot. Right. And so that will effectively ensure that there is transmission very rapidly in communities. But outside of that, children are going to be fine. Thank God for that.
Fine. So hesitancy about the the COVID vaccination in 15 to 18. Or do you have any concerns?
Couple of things. So the government had a CDSCO the Central Drug Control, Drug Safety, whatever. Those guys actually issued a supplementary notification extending the validity of the vaccine by a few months. This is based on the requests from the manufacturer, where they had submitted stability data to show that it is stable. Unfortunately, that became unnecessary controversy where a lot of parents got upset saying, "Oh my God, you're giving expired vaccines and stuff."
Oh, you're
Like
talking
that.
about the expired vaccine. Yeah.
Exactly. This was a totally unnecessary problem. I think it was very poorly handled at many different levels. Number one, CDSCO should have put this up in a major way in newspapers saying, see, or the government of India should have done that, saying, see, do not worry about the expiration dates. We have found it to be acceptable and therefore there should be no concern. Second, the manufacturer could have sent stickers so that they could be relabeled, or they could have done it themselves,
Yeah,
whatever,
yes,
one way or
absolutely.
another.
Ah.
One something like that. And if these kind of steps had been taken, this whole unnecessary controversy need not have come out at all. And
Ah.
this has kind of thrown a spear, spoke in the wheel, and kind of derailed pediatric vaccination in some states at least. And this is just one less controversy we can do with.
Yeah,
But it's
absolutely.
okay. It's okay. It's just something that see. I also
But
remember
in
news
general,
cycles we cannot fodder.
you don't have any concerns about the vaccination actually.
No. Actually speaking, the vaccine is actually quite safe, and we are giving it in our center as well. And across the board, we are listening to all our colleagues who are using this Covaxin for the 15 to 18 age group,
Yes.
and it's actually quite safe. So
Ah.
no, I mean, if my kids were old enough to get it, I would have certainly got them vaccinated by now. So unfortunately, they're not yet there. But yes, I have no concerns about it. I believe they are very good vaccines and they're very safe. And the government has made a good decision in terms of extending vaccination to that age group.
So that brings us next point, sir. That you said vaccination is not available for less than 15. Here, vaccination is not available for less than 5.
Five.
So then that creates a significant anxiety among parents. How to protect my kids? I have seen people bubble wrapping
Yeah.
their kids all the time.
See, you need to understand that this kind of behavior goes to both extremes. So when the question came up about restarting schools,
Uh-huh.
the government in this country was also pretty ambivalent because they realized that the mood was unpredictable. There
Hmm.
were parents who were sick and tired of having children at home for the last
Year and a
two
half.
years. Year and a half. See, my younger one is 5 now, and she still hasn't seen a day of school.
Yeah. Oh.
Right? Just before she was supposed to start LKG, they locked down. அதுக்கப்புறம் I mean end of this I mean in another couple of months UKG will be over. I'm hoping at least for first standard she'll see school. So this is two of the best years of school. Kindergarten is two of the best years of school,
Yes,
and for
absolutely.
her not to be able to see that is just a tragedy.
But the
Yeah, so we
anxiety
have
is.
to.
Hmm.
It's not unfair to say that
Yes.
they are anxious. It's understandable.
Mhm.
So I think vaccination is probably the most important step in that direction. The good news is Covaxin has actually been studied for 2 years and above. That data has not yet been released. And in fact, if you look at what the FDA director has said, they are very excited about Covaxin. And it's been submitted for review in America by another agency, through another agency. Hopefully, we will see if the government of America will want to get Covaxin in to look at the 2 to 5 years of age group, because the mRNA vaccines have not yet got data in that group, but the Covaxin has, actually speaking.
Nice.
So, in fact, the government of Covaxin applied for 12 to 18. The government decided they'll start with 15 to 18 for a couple of reasons. One, because they knew there was a question of boosters for healthcare providers and for the extremely elderly. And so that basically means a lot of vaccines will get diverted that way. So that's why they started with 15 to 18. But I'm sure in very short order, they will make it 12 to 18.
12 to 18.
And then probably move down to maybe even 5 or even 2.
So in
when
general,
they
we
say
can reassure the parents, less than 12, less than 15, as long as try to do your preventive measures as much as possible. Don't go to a movie theater once it's opened up.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? Because the government is so worried about mass congregations, but somehow cinema theaters never seem to get into their
Right now,
field of
the
vision.
doors are open right now.
I'd rather not talk about it.
Sorry, but moving, you want to go to
Pongal release is important. Remember that. Pongal release is important. What the hell are you talking about? Pongal release in Tamil Nadu is very important. No, but see, the government is doing what they can. But I think the general public should also understand that this is for their benefit. It's not like they're being punished. The idea is to keep them safe. Right? Nobody's out to punish somebody else. It's no fun. Remember that a lot of people's livelihood is being thrown into disarray. See, the idea is that we don't want too many people falling sick at the same time and straining the healthcare system. Please understand that a lot of healthcare workers are also sick with COVID. Therefore, call out in healthcare system has gone up tremendously all over the world, for that matter. In the honorable state of Kapilāranyam, where Dr. Parniappan Malikam is working, the state has now decreed that sick workers may be called back into work if they are asymptomatic.
Sir, we got an email, sir. I got an email yesterday. That if you're COVID positive, you need to come as long as you don't have any symptoms.
Exactly. See, it reminds me of what my principal used to say when I was in school. She used to say, I don't care if you're dying, come and die here, kind of thing. Oh my God, these people are actually serious. Oh my God, they actually mean that.
That's what is happening.
I know. So what people need to understand is this. As the COVID work starts increasing, the problem is non-COVID work will really suffer. Because you can have sick people sitting in the COVID area, but you can't have a COVID-infected nurse taking care of a pregnant woman or a cancer patient or a fracture. And these are emergencies or a heart attack. You cannot say, don't have a heart attack, no, have it next month. I can't schedule it like that. So please understand that the more people who get COVID and the more people who need care, it's going to really affect the health of people who don't have COVID. And therefore, you could end up with an unnecessary tragedy in your own family, which is to some extent preventable. That's why we're pleading with people saying, please stay home for now. You really don't want to get this. From a personal point of view, it's extremely miserable. They will tell you it's mild. So in fact, when I was so bellyaching about this, the Times of India reporter, she caught me and said, sir, you should write. So I actually wrote on personal invitation for Times of India. And that's gone viral. That particular article went viral about mild is not really mild kind of thing. But having said that, a lot of people have since called me back and said, you know what, I also went through hell, and they kept telling me it's mild. So one, it is not fun. Two, if you're vulnerable, you could still end up with severe COVID. And three, remember, it's training the healthcare system in that it will take away resources from people who need it for other purposes. And given that healthcare call out is now at an all-time high, and we have a lot of response. In fact, I just saw a letter from Rajiv Gandhi Hospital saying, if you're sick, you still need to come to work. Kind of thing. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know if you saw that. I have to authenticate the document to see if it is real. But I saw that message from.
But are you expecting that to happen with the significance?
No. See, that letter has already come out saying even if you're sick, you better report to work. So you haven't seen that, have you?
I'm not. I'm just
maybe I can send it to you.
My hospital.
No, I'll send it to you. The Rajiv Gandhi Government Hospital, Madras Medical College has actually said, if you're sick, it doesn't matter, come to work anyway.
Oh my God.
So you see, that tells you the kind of call out that we have in terms of healthcare. That's a problem. It's a problem. And I've talked to my colleagues across India. Everybody is going through the same problem. See, among nursing and doctors, everybody was worried about beds and oxygen and drugs. And I was asked the same question last month. And I told them very clearly, listen, guys, you will have the beds, you will have the oxygen, you will have the medicines. Who's going to give all of that to you?
Yeah.
Right? Unless you train yourself to do fix your own HFNC machine or whatever it is.
Somebody has to be there.
And it's tough. See, right now, we have hybrid systems where we say if a healthcare provider falls sick, we give them 5 days leave, and the next 5 days, if they are up to it, we tell them to come and work in the COVID area, simply because we are very short on manpower. I mean, it's not nice. It just isn't nice. I would not want to put my friends and my colleagues through this, but really not much of an option.
So can you answer this question, sir? It says, this question comes on again. So we are double vaccinated. Why should we get a booster?
Okay, that's a good question. So, the problem is we know that not all vaccines work a lifetime. Childhood vaccines, we always assume that they work a lifetime, but we now know that many of these vaccines don't. Number one. Number two, in that as the uh, target changes, sometimes you need a little more. And with a virus which is capable of evolution, like the coronavirus, which is far less than the influenza virus, thank God, but nevertheless, there is evolution. You do need more protection as time goes by.
Mhm.
And this is especially so for those who are most vulnerable. For a young, healthy person, the value of the vaccine is definitely there, but it's greatest for people who are either medically debilitated or elderly, because in them it has clearly been shown that it reduces the risk of severe disease, hospitalization, and death. If you look at the data from Israel, the data is very convincing. The third dose of the vaccine does reduce misery and sickness and death. And for those reasons, I think the third dose of vaccine is definitely a good idea.
Mm. So, this is concerning for many people based on the reports of some five deaths within 1 week of vaccine. This keeps on coming back regardless whatever
Yeah, no
area.
problem. No, I think it's important to address that issue as well. See, please understand there is what is called cause and effect. I could be killed crossing the road tomorrow morning, but that does not mean it happened because I got COVID 1 week, 2 weeks ago. So we need to understand why children die or why anybody dies for that matter. Is it related or is it unrelated? That's why when we do large studies, we do what is called case control design or a randomized clinical trial where we give dummies and or we give the vaccine. Because remember, random events are what is called random because they can happen to anybody. Like, for example, being hit by lightning. Can we say that just because they got the vaccine, they were more likely to get hit by lightning? That doesn't make sense. Can we say that just because they got the vaccine, they were in a plane crash? That doesn't make sense either. So we need to be very clear and careful about understanding what happens when you don't give it and what happens when you do give it.
Mm.
Please understand, in a country like India, there is a lot of causes of death in all age groups. And the number of causes of death, especially preventable causes, is far more in India than
Mm.
it is in the Western world.
Mm.
So the point is, when we start giving the vaccine, there's going to be a lot more
Of
data
these.
capturing and attention to detail. So we're going to capture that, but
Mm.
that does not necessarily mean is related. I think it is important to investigate this. We should not write it off saying it is unrelated and leave it be. That also
Mm.
is a bad idea. But at the same time, to get too overtly anxious about it would also be a mistake
Mm.
because that will prevent us from doing the right thing. And honestly, there is good data to show that the vaccines are protective in terms of safety. And the vaccine that we are using, both in the US and in India for that matter, they are actually very, very safe.
Mm.
Remember, in India, the Covaxin that is being used in that age group, millions of doses have been issued
Mm.
in all age groups, including younger people. And we've not seen any major signal in terms of safety in the young adults. If we
Mm.
take the 18 to 30 age group, we've not seen any major signals.
Mm.
So I doubt if these were related to the vaccine. But
Vaccine.
having said that,
We'll
we
keep an
should
eye on
continue to study this. Absolutely, we should continue to study this. We should continue to follow this. But like I said, if my child is eligible for the vaccine,
it.
I'm
You will
going
not
straight to the
hesitate.
center. Oh, clearly.
Sir, patients with the allergies and postnasal drip, is a booster aggravating?
I have allergies too. No, nothing happens. See, you know, I was on a TV program and this anchor asked me, Doctor, have you taken the booster? I said, it's too late for me because I just got COVID. Doesn't make sense taking the vaccine now. I have to wait a month before I take the vaccine. But having said that, if you haven't had COVID fairly recently in the last 1 month, and if you are well, you should take the vaccine. And we have given it to people with all kinds of allergies. In fact, our head of nursing, she had a life-threatening anaphylaxis to the hepatitis B vaccine.
Okay. Uh-huh, uh-huh.
She went ahead and took the Covaxin, both doses.
Oh
She's
my
due for
God.
the booster now, and no problem.
Nice.
She was petrified about taking it. We literally handheld her and said, "Don't worry, we are here for you. We'll
Super.
give it at the hospital and all that." and she had a documented life-threatening anaphylaxis. That's the
Wow.
worst kind of allergy with
Right.
the hepatitis B vaccine, which happened in our center. So we
Wow.
know that for sure. And
Mm.
with the COVID vaccine, nothing happened.
Nothing
So the good news is that allergies with the vaccine, if you're talking about the mRNA vaccine, that also has an allergy potential, but it's not really related to your underlying medical allergies. So
happened.
no, it's unlikely to aggravate that. It's unlikely to put you at extra risk. I would just go ahead and take the vaccine.
Okay. So this question I put it here because of this antibiotic use in COVID, sir. I know that when I rounded with you, you used to say, "Why is this patient on this antibiotic? What is the reason?" But every COVID patient has this
I know.
Z-Pack, azithromycin, like as a
Yeah.
part of treatment. Can you please educate us?
Oh, don't worry. I just heard that there's a government home pack going around which also has azithromycin in it. I'm just
Who said
gutted.
that?
I have to start. I just have to go and find out whose brainchild this was. But having said that, the Tamil Nadu government has been one of the better guidelines in the country.
Mhm.
And even last year, they were very clear about no role for antibiotics for patients who have mild COVID or even moderate COVID.
Right.
And even in severe COVID, unless there's an indication, antibiotics should not be started, was the
Mhm.
recommendation. So, no, antibiotics could make you more sick. You might end up with a side effect with the antibiotic or a diarrhea with the antibiotic, and really that's not something you want to have.
Uh-huh.
And as somebody whose whole family went through COVID, I can tell you none of us took any antibiotics. We did take a lot of acetaminophen or paracetamol, as we call it here. Be generous with it, no problem. Couple of
Yes.
days is not going to harm you. And
Absolutely.
hydration.
Mm.
Unfortunately, the flu medicines like Tamiflu will not work for this.
Mm.
You can talk to your doctor because there are specific medicines which are now licensed for use against COVID. But again, do you really need it is the question, because most people are getting better by themselves. We only consider using flu specific medicines if the patient is high risk,
Mm.
right? Transplant recipient, cancer patient, or dialysis, things like that. For young, healthy people, with mild disease, we are not giving any for any COVID specific medicines, just supportive therapy, lots of hydration,
Right.
and that's it.
The question on Favipiravir. We have not used here in the United States. What is
Lucky
it?
you.
Favipiravir.
Lucky you. See, let me put it like this. Favipiravir, the data on it is being published in an engineering journal.
Engineering journal.
You didn't know that, did you? Most of the data comes from engineering journals. I first saw that and I was like, wait a second, did I read that right? It is engineering. Then I said, no, we are not touching this. So I'm proud to say I have never touched Favipiravir for myself or any of my patients.
Is
So
that right?
no, we
Wow.
won't. Yeah,
Ah.
we have not used Favipiravir. So no.
I should tell you that you are one of the few doctors, sir, that who have not used Favipiravir the last year.
Yeah, we have not used Favipiravir at all at our center. Our center guidelines are very clear. No role for Favipiravir. Even Remdesivir, our use is very minuscule because if you look at survival data, not much of a difference. Now, of course, the indication is slightly different.
Right.
But Favipiravir we have not used simply because we were never convinced about it. And I think a lot of it was because, of panic reaction. Because we feel better when we have something which we feel is directly against the virus kind of thing. But fortunately, the monoclonal antibody came out middle of last year. And honestly, that's a much better drug than any of the other oral drugs. So I'm sure you guys have used a lot of it as well.
Lot.
Yeah.
A
So
lot.
I wish we had it during the second wave. That would have saved a lot of lives.
Right.
But having said that, it has made a difference. We've had a lot of people get it, and we had by end of last year we had used more than 200 doses, and not one person who got it in the first week came back for admission in the second week.
So it's an expensive monoclonal antibody.
How expensive is your life?
That's the argument, because it really
There you
saves
go.
lives.
Exactly. See, I mean, I wouldn't want to go through the misery of COVID. See, forget life. If you've gone through COVID and you've had a week of fun, honestly, see, I wish I'd taken the monoclonal antibody this time around. I made a mistake in making the diagnosis. I kept thinking it was my body ache was so bad. I kept thinking it was dengue, and I was testing for dengue.
Sir, let me stop you this. Do you think the monoclonal antibody for even for mild to moderate, or what do you think?
No, let me put it like this. when we started using monoclonal antibody, to date, we have been measuring outcomes in every patient. So we give them phone calls at 24 hours, 72 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and all that. And the response to the therapy has been incredible. They start feeling much better so much faster. So would I shell out that amount of money for feeling better quickly? The answer is hell yes. Hell yes. I felt like I'd been dragged through the bush backwards. I mean, I was looking around to find out who beat me up this badly. Why would I want to feel like that? Honestly, see, it's not about me requiring a ventilator. I don't want to feel like I'm going to pass out, walk into the bathroom for heaven's sake. Right? How is that fun? So, no, thank you. I'd rather take it. So, I wish I had taken it. I should have. I'm looking back, it was a mistake.
So, if a
many of my
patient,
patients have
if a
taken it.
patient has tested COVID positive and he wants monoclonal antibody, how do they approach? They approach a hospital?
Yeah, most hospitals have now stopped using monoclonal antibodies simply because the in vitro data on Omicron seems to be pretty poor. But having said that, there is no in vivo data, and we have continued to use the monoclonal antibody after giving the required counseling to the patient, saying there is no data, and as of right now, the in vitro data does not seem very promising. But surprisingly, it is working. Surprisingly, it is working.
It's working over here.
Yeah. So, are you looking for the S gene dropout before you give the monoclonal antibody?
Yes.
We are not.
Okay.
We are not. You see, by the time the S gene dropout, see, most tests do not have the S gene in it. So I just have a rapid antigen done at home, which comes back positive, or a PCR which comes back positive. Now I have to tell him, go get the S gene dropout PCR done again, which will take another 24 hours. What am I trying to achieve? And having said that, we are giving it to all comers, including our own staff. Everybody has told me that they feel so much better within 24 hours, right? Including the people who are absolutely miserable.
Sure. I'll just summarize this for the audience. I think a lot of information wanted to make sure everybody understands. So monoclonal antibody is one of the treatment options for COVID-19. Before they have been used only for like severe infections in the past, first and second wave. But now what we are saying is that even with one dose of monoclonal antibody makes you a night and day difference when you're even with mild to moderate COVID positive. I think the Favipiravir, Molnupiravir, all those doesn't make it. If you want that antibody, it's an infusion. It has to be in a hospital setting. So talk to your doctor as well. Yeah.
No, the good news is it can be done as a quick procedure. So what we did was insurance has now, IRDA has now said that they will cover it. They've sent a notification to all the insurance companies in India, at least, that monoclonal antibody will be covered by insurance. So sometimes we have problems, but then they usually appeal to their insurer. And invariably it gets covered, number one. Number two, we show it as a daycare procedure where we admit them for 2 hours, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours, something like that, where we quickly give the infusion, watch them for a little while, and then give them all the instructions and send them home. So it generates a discharge summary, and therefore, since it's shown as a outpatient procedure, meaning as a daycare admission, it becomes a little more easier for the insurance to handle it. When you have to give it in a doctor's office, getting insurance claim and all that stuff becomes a little more difficult. But when you do it as a daycare procedure, and daycare procedures, remember, are fairly commonplace thanks to oncology work and so many other things. So the insurance companies are also more aware of this. And since IRDA has also issued this notification that it's approved for this indication, now getting approval is not so difficult.
How about monoclonal antibody in kids?
It's approved for 12 and over, provided that 40 kilos and over. We have given it to morbidly obese children. We have given it. And the other indication I have seen is children who have immune problems, especially transplant and things like that. So those are the two indications that have come up. I know there are people who have used it in other conditions like dialysis and things like that. But under the 12 to 18 age group, the numbers are fairly small. We have maybe 2 children, 2 adolescents who have received the monoclonal antibody here in our center. The other place where we seem to use a lot of it is probably pregnancy.
Pregnancy, yeah.
So, because pregnancy is a high risk thing, and it's now acknowledged that pregnancy does have bad outcomes.
Absolutely. This is a very common question, sir, from Vaidyanatha Subramanian. He says, how long will it take COVID positive patient to test negative in PCR?
Why do you want to get a negative test? The answer of a positive test is not a negative test. The answer to sickness is health. The
But they
endpoint to
still, right?
sickness, no, I'll explain. See, the endpoint to sickness is health. The endpoint to sickness is not a negative test. This is the problem. People seem to think that doing a test and Googling it tells you what to do. The answer is it doesn't. You need to understand how to interpret every test. Being positive means the test is positive. It does not tell you what you have. For example, let us say you had COVID last month. Your PCR can still turn positive this month simply because it's a very sensitive test and it can find dead fragments also. Think of it like this. If you start doing these kind of PCR, if you start looking for DNA in Tutankhamun's skeleton, you will find DNA. That doesn't mean he's alive today. He is long dead. Everybody knows that. But his DNA will still be there. So finding DNA and finding RNA are different from finding disease or finding a problem. So please be careful about that. That's why all guidelines, including the CDC specifically say that if you turn positive, your endpoint cannot be a negative test, and you should not be retesting for the next 3 months unless
3
there's
months.
a reason to do so. There's a reason to do so. There are
So
specific situations where we do retest.
I'm avoiding all the significant questions because multiple questions coming in because this conversation is so interesting.
Yeah.
I want to know more as well. So once you get positive, at least over here, what they say is you isolate for 5 days, and then if
Correct.
you are surrounded by immunosuppressive people at home, you retest with a rapid antigen test. Is that something that you do in India as well?
See, I think that is going to be difficult because everybody here, households are fairly larger than what it is in the US. And you generally have older parents, in laws, something like that around. And they will obviously be high risk people. And transmission with the Omicron is so rapid that you can assume that one person is infected in the family, everybody is infected. By the time you pick up the infection, it's already spread to everybody. So to me, this approach really doesn't make sense because this is based on modeling not just from Delta but from the original Wuhan virus. Even the Delta spreads faster than that. So this concept of trying to keep other people safe after you detect infection just doesn't work because transmission happens in minutes and it's not in hours. Because in a domestic setting, you're not wearing a mask, and unmasked transmission is minutes, maybe
Minutes.
2-3 minutes. That's it.
Mm.
That's it. With Omicron, it's just 2-3 minutes. So we are talking about
What should I-
something.
So what should a patient do when they are COVID positive? Isolate for
Very
5
good.
days, and after that?
Absolutely. Let them isolate for 5 days. But it's important that the other people in the family also remain vigilant and note down their symptoms also. See, I believe in the whole family being quarantined. Because one person is infected, it's almost guaranteed that the whole family is infected. That's fine. Let them all sit together, let them get together, let them stay together, and let them all heal together. If somebody requires healthcare intervention, they can come to the hospital. But the majority of people can just stay home as a family and get better. In a week's time, everybody will be through with the infective period, unless they have more significant illness. For mild illness, by day 7, you're really no longer infective. And after that, for you to come out into society should not be so bad. See, please understand the intention behind reducing the period of isolation is simply because it's very difficult to keep people under lock and key for 2 weeks' time, and people won't follow it. So the idea is to pick your target sensibly so that you are able to get acceptance from the stakeholder. Again, remember that this does not apply to people who are significantly immunosuppressed. For example, if you have a transplant recipient, they can remain infective for up to 20 days or even longer.
Okay.
So please be aware that this is for the majority of people who are in the community who are reasonably healthy. They stay home for a week and then they move on. I think that should be fine. Most important thing is do not retest to see if you're okay.
So do not retest. That's the most important thing. Do not retest, right? So and then mask wise, please educate us. N95 surgical mask.
So a bare minimum is a surgical mask. For Omicron, a cloth mask is going to do absolutely nothing. An N95 is actually a good idea. It all depends on where you are. If you're going to be outdoors without much crowding, even a plain mask probably is okay. On the other hand, as you get indoors and as the density of the crowd is higher, it becomes more and more necessary to wear an N95. If you look at recent data, what they are saying is that you can even get away with just keeping 2 N95 masks and using it on alternate days for maybe a couple of weeks also, as long as you handle them well. See, N95 masks, they just need 24 hours by itself, set it aside for it to kind of get better. Interestingly, that's what I've been doing for the last 1.5 years. So
Me as well.
Exactly. So my team does the same thing as well. We get our own private supply of. We don't use N95s. We use FFP2s. Don't ask me why, because there's a huge cost differential in India with the N95 and FFP2. So if you're worried about the cost of N95, get FFP2s. They are cheaper and they achieve the same effect.
FFP2, huh? FFP2.
Yeah, that's the British system.
British
Europeans use, yeah. So that's about 93.5, 94% effective. N95 is 95% effective.
So what is this KN95? So what is that?
That's a Chinese guideline. Remember, they made a separate standard for Chinese make. So KN95 stands for the Chinese make. I would not be too happy with KN95. If you don't have a choice, you can go for KN95. KN95 is not as great as N95.
Okay.
They are not the same. So
Okay.
N95 is still N95. KN95 is definitely less than that. I would rather go for an FFP2 rather than a KN95. See, your N99 and FFP3 are again comparable.
Okay.
Right? But again, see, if you get two N95 masks for yourself and you use it on alternate days and leave it out to air, you can use it for at least 2-3 weeks. By that time the wave will come down, and then we can probably retire to a simpler mask, I suppose. But for now, I think that's the way to go.
And you keep the N95 in a brown paper bag, or you just leave it alone?
I leave it in a open area where it gets aerated.
Aerated. Okay. And as you said, the wave is expected to die down in 2-3 weeks, isn't it?
See, again, there are quite a few models as far as India is concerned. So I've been talking about this on TV for the last couple of weeks. I know. Rahul Kanwal seemed to make a joke out of it. Anyway, so last month itself, I had said that I expect the peak in Bombay somewhere by Jan 15th to 20th, and the rest of India should be peaking anytime between then and before the end of January. By mid to late February, we'll be down to baseline, close to baseline. It'll really crash. IIT had initially said the peak will be in February, but when they joined us on the debate in India Today TV, they said they had recalculated and they found that the wave was moving a lot faster than they expected. And their pronouncement at that time was they had said that they expect the peak before February. What you want into it, but they said it's before February. I mean, I don't want to say anything. I just smiled and kept quiet.
But South Africa, that's what happened, right? They had a huge uptick and then it came rapidly down.
Absolutely. Now, if you look at the graphs from every other country, most countries have already peaked. Western Europe, majority of the countries have already peaked, like Netherlands and Germany and places like that. They have already peaked and they have already started falling. So the epi curves are very, very similar. It's interesting because remember that this is a virus which doesn't really care whether you're vaccinated or whether you have previous infection.
Right.
The infectivity is the same for everybody. It's basically like, it's a new virus sweeping across. The vaccination status changes your severity, but the chance of infection is the same for everybody. So for every country, the epi curve is going to look the same. And that's exactly what I was saying, that the epi curve is not going to change based on the amount of vaccination you've given, unless, of course, you've aggressively gone for booster dosing, in which case it could make a little bit of a dent. But I think India graph is also following the same pattern. Bombay is already starting to see stability. I am hoping the next 2-3 days they'll start climbing down. And hopefully the rest of India will also see a similar pattern.
So regarding vaccination, cross-vaccination. So 2 doses of Covishield, will you take Covaxin or will you take Covishield again? if given an option to you.
There's a scientific answer and there's a practical answer. The scientific answer is most of us seem to prefer heterologous vaccination, in that if you've taken one vaccine, take the other vaccine. Here's the problem. The government of India has decided it's going to be homologous vaccine. The reason is because they've decided it is so. And see, remember, if you try to beat the system and get heterologous vaccination, you're not going to get a certificate. European Union has already said that the primary series is only going to be valid for 9 months. They're mulling a decision on that. If they do decide that the primary vaccine is only valid for 9 months, and if you have to travel, then what are you going to do with the certificate? So there is a downside to not taking the vaccine that the government is recommending for you. But if all things were equal and we had the choice, since I have taken 2 doses of the Covishield, I would have really loved to take a dose of Covaxin, or even better, I would have gone for the protein subunit vaccine, something like Corbevax would have been my preference for various reasons. But unfortunately, I am going to follow what the government has said and not take any vaccines now. Maybe wait a month since I just had COVID and probably take Covishield sometime next month.
So here in US, they're saying that, I mean, at least the guidelines are, if you're asymptomatic after being diagnosed with COVID infection, it is okay to take vaccine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. See, the reason why we want to space it out a little bit is a couple of reasons. One is with the Covishield, there is this risk of thrombogenicity, and we know post-COVID also there is this risk of thrombogenicity. We just don't want to add 1+1. That's one. The second thing is that we don't want infective people running to vaccine centers and vaccine centers becoming amplification points. You know, I've talked about this in the past that most hospitals are actually very badly designed to be vaccine centers because they are centrally air conditioned. And the vaccine center is in the middle of the hospital, where everywhere around you there's a COVID patient. See, we are lucky in that for us in the hospital we have lots of space.
Oh, nice.
So our vaccine center is in a separate building. Right, so they don't come into the main hospital at all. They go into what is called the academic block, where the lab is and all the other auditoriums and all that are there. So it's a separate area. So it's kept separate from the other queue. Unfortunately, that's not a luxury that 99.9% of hospitals in India can afford. So what happens is there ends up being mixing of crowds, and vaccine centers end up running the risk of becoming amplifying points. So for all these reasons, I think it is better that people wait for a month and then take the vaccine.
Okay. And then how about people who are in US, got 2 doses of Pfizer, comes in India, especially parents?
Yeah.
And then it's okay to take Covishield or Covaxin. What is your take on that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I have had all kinds of combinations like this. Right now, I have an elderly couple whose daughter was working for UPU, Universal Postal Union in Switzerland. So the husband got Pfizer and the wife got Moderna, or am I saying it wrong? Whatever. And now she's moved to Washington, D.C. and they are there right now. So they are after me asking me what vaccine to take, whether they should take the booster there or whether they should come back to India and take the booster. See, the good news is, or the bad news, whichever way, we have no clue. We just know 3 doses are a good idea. But nobody can tell you if A and B are the better combination or B and C are the better combination. The good news is any kind of boosting will give you benefit. How much benefit? I think that will take a long time for us to figure out. So if you get the vaccine there, that's no problem. If you want to come back to India and then get your vaccine, that is also fine. Just make sure you keep all your paperwork very, very carefully, because in the future for people, this is going to become absolutely critical. Let us see. Again, it's not clear, because I just heard today on the BBC at least that UK is thinking about getting away from vaccine-related mandates for travel and things like that.
So that brings to the next question, sir. So Raj is asking, to travel outside country, we need RT-PCR negative.
Correct.
So in this situation, I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
Correct. So what we have noticed is that the only antiviral which has a profound effect in the viral load is a monoclonal antibody. So in the studies that were done with the monoclonal antibody therapy, the viral loads fell in an exponential basis. Not just that they had symptoms relief, but they also noticed that the amount of virus being shed comes down very, very fast. So to go from PCR positivity to negativity will probably be faster with the monoclonal antibody. I'm not saying that's a reason to take the monoclonal antibody. I'm just saying that if somebody has taken the monoclonal antibody, they are going to end up becoming probably PCR negative at a faster frame of time as compared to others. Having said that, again, the problem is the interpretation of all of this is extremely individualized. Like, let us say you are to travel somewhere and you have COVID. And somebody has recently traveled after having a certificate saying they had recent COVID, and now they are traveling back to their country because of all the problems. Let's not name any names. We all know who it is. But having said that, see, these are all difficult problems simply because it all depends on the carrier. If carrier A may decide that since you have doctor certificate saying you've recovered from COVID and the CDC has said you don't need testing, they may accept it and let you go. Carrier B may say, no, You have to get tested.
Yes.
Or even if carrier B says, even if carrier A says no, you don't need testing, your hop-over point may decide that you may need testing. So the problem is internationally, this thing is a bit chaotic right now.
Right.
So what I'm going to say is this: if you're traveling, check both with the carrier and also at your stopover point, wherever you're connecting, what the policies are and what the rules are. Because you really don't want to go to a stopover point, have a PCR done over there, and that comes back positive, because that would be the worst kind of situation to be in. You're better off being where you are with a positive PCR than midway through your journey with a positive PCR.
Okay.
That would really, really suck. So please check all of this before you take a call. But I think in the next couple of months, these things will get sorted out, because there is increasing pressure for harmonization of this. And the international aviation organizations have not given a white paper on this. If they did, it might become easier for the aviation. See, the problem is that the aviation companies are subject to not just the international regulations, they are also subject to the regulations of the country that they are in. So that's a problem. So you can have a crackpot country which says, no, everybody has to have a negative PCR. Then it's going to be difficult. So I think some amount of clarity will happen in the next few months. Right. But as of right now, it's literally a kangaroo court.
I mean, it's a good thing to actually hold off on the travel as well.
Yeah. Well, unless you're adventurous. I just recently heard about a young man who flew all alone in a flight from British Airways flight from London to Orlando.
Business class.
He said no. He said no. By according to the rule, we are not. I was not allowed into business or first class. I had to stay in economy, but they plied me with food like nobody's business. So I had fun. The guy has put up some videos and all that on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
He was all alone in a flight from London to Orlando.
Oh my God!
Like, wow. I know. See, honestly, if I had a choice, I'd want to travel now.
Sir, your patient, sir. Dr. Subramanian treated my husband ICU. So they're doing well. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. This is a controversial question. Not controversial question. I keep on asking. I'm being asked this all the time. How do we know whether it is Omicron? Why not this is Delta?
We don't. See, the point is that what we know is that Omicron, see, it's like a race where you have two runners. You have Delta and you have Omicron. Omicron is running way faster than Delta. So Delta, normally you would expect to get a silver medal. But here's the problem. When you talk about evolutionary adaptations and domination, there is no second place. It's like a war in history. There's only one winner. There is no loser, because the loser is finished. That's what is happening with Delta. Everywhere, Omicron is literally pushing Delta out and replacing Delta completely. Delta did this to all the other variants in the past. Now Omicron is doing this to Delta. The difference is it's doing it at a very, very fast pace. So the point is, even now there are pockets of Delta. Problem is, unless you do gene sequencing, you cannot be sure which one it is. All the surrogate markers are not accurate, because not having this gene does not mean it is Omicron. There is one variant of Omicron where the S gene will be picked.
Okay.
So this S gene dropout can be a surrogate marker for Omicron, but the S gene being present does not mean it's Delta. And we are seeing this variant in certain places, like Calcutta. Apparently, that percentage is on the higher side. Tamil Nadu also has a significant percentage of that. We don't know exactly how many. But the point is, it's only a question of time before Delta gets completely replaced by Omicron. And I think that day is not too far off.
And that is why we are saying that don't take the Omicron mild, because it could still be Delta. It's because it's
absolutely around. Absolutely. So we don't know which one it is. And if you get COVID at this point, it just sucks.
Exactly. So Renuka is asking pregnancy in Omicron.
We don't know. Again, Delta had a bad effect on pregnancy. I remember during the last wave, we had at least a dozen young women who came in requiring up to HFNC, high flow nasal cannula. And, by the grace of God, except one, we managed to save all of them. It was, it's pretty bad. So much so that we started using the monoclonal antibody for our pregnant women. This is a bigger problem if they come in close to term, because if they go into labor, it's very tough. So we are using the monoclonal antibody for pregnant women, although it's not formally indicated for this because there's no data. See, let me put it like this. My wife is a gynecologist, and she says you dare not discriminate against a woman just because she's pregnant. It's not her fault that she's pregnant, right? If you say she's high risk, and if you say high risk people deserve the monoclonal antibody, and you say because she's pregnant, I will not give her the monoclonal antibody, I will find whatever I have in my hand and start throwing it on your head. She's right. She's right.
Right.
Why are we discriminating against a person who we know is high risk just because she's pregnant?
Right.
We love to say the mother is first, the baby is not first. But here we say, oh, she's pregnant. But somehow the mother now becomes irrelevant, is it?
I think the people should understand that pregnancy is a high risk, almost similar to an immunocompromised state. Maybe like
absolutely
cancer.
Correct.
Maybe like cancer.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. So pregnant women should be handled very, very carefully. See, the good news is the majority of pregnant women have a very mild course. But it's not something you want to roll the dice on.
Yes.
Fortunately, in India, at least, the majority of women have been vaccinated either before pregnancy or during pregnancy for COVID. Thank God for that. But we do see once in a while, a pregnant woman who has not taken the monoclonal antibody, the vaccine. In which case we do offer them the monoclonal antibody and we ask them to take a call. Most of them do take it. Some of them don't want to take it, but that's a personal choice. We just don't want to see a very sick pregnant woman coming into the ICU. I mean, it's not fun. It's not fun. We've had women who've gone through hell, absolute hell. I mean, I wouldn't wish this on anybody for that matter.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Imran. All your donations goes to our Aishwaryam Trust in Madurai, as you guys know. So next question is Mango. Mango, that's an interesting name. Autoimmune.
Oh, I love some.
Rheumatoid arthritis. Any booster, Covishield, Covaxin. Tell us.
Absolutely no problem.
The answer is okay. But if they are on steroids or methotrexate.
That's the problem. That's the problem. In that, remember, if you have an underlying medical illness, especially rheumatological illness, your risk with COVID is higher than normal people. One, because of the disease, and two, because of the medicines that's given for the disease. So, two reasons. Now, when we do give the vaccine, we usually talk to the rheumatologist and ask them, can we bring the person down to the least amount of therapy around the time of vaccination so that they get the best effect out of it? Obviously, disease control is far more important. If the rheumatologist feels that the patient has very delicate disease which can go out of control if they try to do something, we don't touch that. We go ahead and vaccinate them. On the other hand, if the rheumatologist feels that they will be able to reduce the amount of medicine so that the vaccine becomes a little more effective, it's not a problem. Please note that not all rheumatoid medicines are bad. Like hydroxychloroquine has no problem as far as vaccination is concerned. Steroid under 20 milligrams a day is usually not a problem. On the other hand, drugs like methotrexate, that is a bit of a problem. If you're on low dose methotrexate, it may not be too bad. But if you're on a higher dose of methotrexate or if you're on any other design of medicines, then yes, it could be a problem. The best thing to do would be to talk to your rheumatologist and ask them if we can reduce it safely and then go for the vaccine. If they feel that it's not a good idea, then you accept it and go ahead with the vaccine.
So this Molnupiravir, have you prescribed and will you prescribe?
I wouldn't give it to my dog at this point at least.
So it's 2,500 rupees for a package. One package is 2,500.
That's fine. That's fine. I can sell one special medicine, which I will not tell you what it is, for 10,000 rupees. You cannot ask me what it is. It is common salt, but I will charge 10,000 for that. No, but seriously.
Have they included ICMR or no?
No, see, the point is the Indian government guidelines has included it as one of the options. Here's the problem. Molnupiravir, it came out with a lot of fanfare, but the study had some glaring issues with it. When they submitted the data, in the first half, it seemed to be quite effective, 50% reduction. But in the second half of the study, it really showed no benefit. And they felt it was probably because it was the Delta variant at that time. So obviously, it's variant related. How well it performs against Omicron is not clear. Second, there is a big flag in people who have the chance of being pregnant or likely to become pregnant in the next couple of months. So there is what we call a teratogenicity potential. So you got to be careful about giving it to young people who are in the childbearing age group, both men and women. So I think there are some concerns about it. So at this point, if we are going to say it's a mild illness and not many people are going to develop severe disease, why do we need a medicine? Right. See, against Delta, at least, quite a few people develop sickness. Quite a few people require hospitalization.
Right.
With Omicron, if the hospitalization requirement is so low, then the benefit of the medicine is next to nothing.
So it would be that particular high risk, small subset of patients who might get benefit out of this tablet.
I would go for the monoclonal antibody.
Monoclonal antibody.
There you go. See, we are seeing very good results. See, I agree that the data is very difficult to say, but we are seeing very good results. Meaning my close friend Hari, he gave it to his wife. Sorry, Hari, I had to disclose that. But he gave it to his wife. I know, she was miserable. And today she's like, she calls me and says, "Hi, sir, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm doing very well." So,
is there any contraindication for this monoclonal antibody?
Yeah, it's very toxic to your wallet.
Exactly.
That's the only contraindication.
The wallet is heavy. I think it is okay.
I agree. See, my point is this: if I can afford it, I would take it. See, I agree that it's not going to be the answer for the majority of the masses in the country, simply because the cost is prohibitive. But remember, see, it's like computers. When computers came out, I don't know how many of you had a computer about 15 years ago or 20 years ago. So nobody. My first computer, my first laptop, I got it in 2004, something like that. That was the first time I came to the US. My brother bought it for me. I mean, it was insanely expensive. And that was like 512 GB RAM. 512 GB RAM in those days was a big deal. Whoa, kind of thing. But today, laptops have become really, really cheap. You can get computers for such a low price. In that, over time, as volumes go up, cost will come down. And I think that is inevitable. See, it's like rabies immunoglobulin is so expensive. But rabies monoclonal antibody, which is manufactured in India, is actually quite cheap. So yes, there is a Indian company which is looking at this space right now, and I think if they come out with a product, I think the price will be very attractive. So I think it's only a question of time, because this is a designer option, and it's something that can be redesigned according to your target as you need it.
So in your experience, has any side effects or any complications you have seen? No,
nothing.
And is it one-time infusion? Just one time?
That's it. One time.
You come in, out and infusion, you're done.
Exactly.
Okay, good. So, Gadgets is asking, 2 doses of Covaxin 7 months back, Regeneron 3 months back. When should I get it for booster? Should be okay now.
Okay, so that's important. Regeneron is the monoclonal antibody, Ronaprev or Regeneron. Roche Regeneron combination. That is the Ronaprev or Regencov, as it's called. So it's important to know that those people who got the monoclonal antibody cocktail, they should not take a vaccine for 3 months. So now, if it's 3 months since you got the monoclonal antibody cocktail, you can go for the booster if you're medically eligible for it. See, the problem is you may not get the vaccine because the government has said that it should be 9 months from the second dose of the vaccine. If you're only 7 months from the second dose of the vaccine, unless you're a medical fraternity, you're not going to be eligible for it. They are very clear. It has to be 39 weeks, not even 9 months, 39 weeks. So I would probably check with your nearest center. They'll probably say, no, go back, because you're not yet 39 months, but 39 weeks, that is. So all of those points have to be noted. It has to be at least 39 weeks since the second dose. You have to be in the appropriate demographic. And if you've taken the monoclonal antibody, at least 3 months should have elapsed.
So this question is Swasame. I think he's an A.R. Rahman fan. Remdesivir outpatient. Have you guys started? Or, I mean, I know you are not doing it, but in general, outpatient Remdesivir.
Some people have. See, the point is, Remdesivir, again, that study was something that was stopped midway because they could not recruit patients anymore. So, I don't like studies which were abandoned midway, number one. Number two, it was all in people who were unvaccinated. So, the study was completely on unvaccinated. There were 0 vaccinated people in that study. So we don't know how well it will work. So my point is that, again, it's the same thing as with every other antiviral. If you are going to say it's a mild disease and most people are going to be fine, why do we need an antiviral? The antiviral should be reserved only for people who are at high risk for progression, right? So if that is so, then I would go for the best drug that I have. And to me, I don't think you have a better drug than monoclonal antibody. If cost is an issue, then yes, you can go for Remdesivir. It is a reasonable option. But having said that, remember, there are side effects of Remdesivir, so you need to watch for that. But it's not a toxic drug. It's not a really toxic drug that way. But the question is how effective it is.
We used to take EKG before Remdesivir here because it causes cardiac arrhythmias.
Correct.
So,
That is not something that people are paying attention to, unfortunately. Yeah.
So right now, the most common question is, it is not a question of whether you will get affected with Omicron, just a matter of when will you get affected. Infected COVID-like symptoms, when to seek medical attention, and then we'll wrap it up with one last question.
Excellent. So the point is, if you have if the entire family is having symptoms of upper respiratory symptoms, fever and things like that, the whole family is having COVID. You don't need to test for that. It's fairly obvious. The risk is primarily for people who are vulnerable. So if you have an older person or people who have medical comorbidities, these are the kind of people who should talk to their doctor at the earliest so that they get appropriate guidance on what is to be done and also monitoring for this. So remember, take paracetamol round the clock, hydrate well, take rest, do not take unnecessary medicines. Please do not forget your regular medicines. That's something, a mistake that a lot of people do. They forget to take the regular medicines. That's a bad idea. Please make sure. If you're diabetic, pay attention to your blood sugars and things like that. If your fever continues to persist beyond day 3, day 4, it's a good idea to talk to your doctor to try and see if anything more needs to be done. The majority of people by 4 to 5 days will be asymptomatic and they'll be fine. Remember, people don't get very sick in the first week. The sickness usually happens in the second week. But if you start getting better in the first week itself, you probably won't need much more than that. But actually, it's basically common sense approach and being very, diligent in documenting your own sickness. And
how about pulse ox levels?
Good idea. I think you should do that, and it's required as part of the government of India's home isolation requirements.
Okay.
So you need to ensure that you monitor your pulse ox. Keep watching that. One thing people should know: do not panic based on your pulse ox, because most of the stuff that you get is Chinese stuff. We are still suffering from the gift that we got from China. So please be careful about whatever you get from China. So I've had people calling me in a panic saying, "Oh my God, my saturation is 85%. Relax, you're talking to me, so it cannot be 85%. Right. Go to the nearest ER, check it with the proper machine over there. Then they look at it like 97. There you go. So please be careful that you should not get too panicky because the numbers are not okay. Because sometimes the calibration may fail. So especially if you bought this 1 year ago and you're still using it, I'm not saying you can't use it. Be careful because it may fail calibration and therefore the numbers may not be accurate.
Okay. Thank you, Raman, for your support as well. Nikita and Aishwaryam Trust is our trust that we run in Madurai for hospice care patients. And then one last thing is, I cannot let you go without a controversial question. I had a controversial question here. Here it is. Ivermectin for COVID.
Sure. I think it's good. See, the people who manufacture Ivermectin also have to make a living, right? Why not? See, I've had religious shamans come and do views and all that stuff. So everything goes. Nothing wrong with that. See, let's put it like this. There is good data to say that it doesn't work. I have never used it. I do not intend using it. I do use it. I'll tell you where I do use Ivermectin. I have had patients who go into very severe COVID who require steroids and TOSI and things like that. For them, they can develop a certain parasitic infection which can be life-threatening called strongyloidiasis. For that, we do use Ivermectin. But outside of that, we do not use Ivermectin because the data is very clear. It doesn't work.
If I say that here loud, my hospital, they will put me in jail.
I know. I'm very aware of that. See, it's like this. I am not against free will. Everybody is entitled to what they want to do. Right. But remember that everything comes with consequences. See, I am more worried that people who are focusing on Ivermectin forget to focus on what else needs to be done, right? In terms of making sure that they hydrate well, take the paracetamol, monitor the pulse ox and things like that, and report to a doctor if they are not feeling well. Because it gives them a false sense of security, and that is dangerous. So while I really don't care about Ivermectin, I think maybe it will deworm the whole of India and the whole of the world. I suppose we'll probably get rid of all parasitic infection. Worm infestations will become a thing of the past. I don't know. But having said that, I think, this is taking the focus away from what we need to do.
Okay. One more controversial question. Anirudh Ramesh, he's our long-term subscriber. So he's asking, why does no vaccine manufacturers doesn't take any responsibility or liability?
See, that's not true. That's not true. In that, remember, in the US at least, they have what is called a vaccine adverse events reporting system. In that,
Mhm.
the government reimburses people who have been harmed by vaccine when there is a proven vaccine related side effect. Number one. Number two, in that, that's why we do large scale studies, and there is post marketing surveillance in terms of what happens when people develop side effects due to a vaccine.
Mhm.
So these things do happen, and the point is that this is designed to give full disclosure. Can you tell me any drug which doesn't have a side effect? People are so happy popping antibiotic pills all the
Yes.
time, but
Yes.
these things have side effects. Somehow that doesn't seem to be a problem, right? We don't have a problem popping pills, right?
Oh,
We
but
don't have a
McDonald's
problem.
burger. McDonald's burger.
There you go. See, my problem, that's exactly it. See, we have no problem putting all kinds of junk into our body. But getting a vaccine somehow seems to be the worst thing on the earth. I'm not saying that the vaccines are perfect. Nothing is perfect. But having
Exactly.
said that, remember the vaccination is probably the one medical intervention that has been studied to the greatest amount of data. So, simply put, there's a difference. Medicines are given things given to sick people, and therefore you are hoping that they'll get well because they're already sick. On the other hand, vaccines are given to people who are healthy, and
Mhm.
these are therefore they are held to a much higher level of accountability and safety. So developing a vaccine today is a very difficult process. It's not cheap.
It's
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 not
not
easy.
easy. It's not easy. Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Please understand that's why it is so expensive to get vaccines done today. So therefore, please don't underestimate how much safety data that goes into this. And post-marketing surveillance is mandatory in most countries as far as vaccines are concerned, including India.
Mm.
So please understand, their data is being continuously collected and it is being reported. So we
Mm.
know what's happening. And the good news is that the event rate is not out of proportion to what we would see in otherwise normal people. Like, for example, if you look at heart attacks, whether you get the vaccine, whether you go don't get the vaccine, the risk of heart attack in the next 100 days or whatever it is the same. It's not like getting the vaccine increase the risk of heart attack. So
Right.
that kind of data is
Mm.
available. So that's why you need to be very careful about causality. Did that cause this? Right? Being hit by lightning is not caused by the vaccine. So remember that and be very careful about what people put out in public domains as far as
Yes.
I got harmed by the vaccine.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Sir, Ashish is just saying thank you, and I also thank you as well, sir. One last question: when do you think this is all going to end, and what is your crystal ball?
My crystal ball says a few thousand years from now, we'll be hit by an asteroid and the Earth will come to an end. Is that what you're looking for? No, seriously. See, the point is that I think there are a couple of good things that have happened as far as COVID is concerned. One, it's taught us the importance of public health. Two, it's made us go back to basic things in terms of hand hygiene, in terms of respecting distance and personal space and things like that. So I think certain good things have come out of it. Also, we've also now looked at ventilation systems and air handling and things like that in a lot more sensible way than we have ever done before. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we should thank COVID for a lot of good things that have come out of it. And not just that, we've also looked at the technology. Look at how fast vaccines have come through. It's
Absolutely.
question of getting beautiful new technology which could be incredibly useful in the times to come. So a
Mm.
lot of good things have come out of it. No, see, this is a disaster. Let's not say two ways about it. But let's also be clear that a lot of good things have come out of it. The problem is with a variant like Omicron, it's going to be very difficult to extinguish it because it is moving very, very fast.
Mm.
Most importantly, if you look at all the new variants that are coming out, they all come out from communities where the vaccination levels are very, very poor.
Mm.
Delta came out from an unvaccinated India. Omicron has come out from an unvaccinated Africa.
Okay. Mm.
And now they're talking about this EU variant, which has come out of unvaccinated Cameroon. As long as there is vaccine disparity in the world, I'm sorry, we are going to be in trouble. We're going to remain in trouble. And I
Mm.
think we need to start looking beyond our own small island
Sure.
and
Mm.
look at the whole world. And I
Mm.
think it's important. That's why WHO keeps screaming, saying this abuse of vaccines in certain countries is not right because the primary series of vaccine is absolutely critical.
Right.
I agree in that we need to ensure that South America has done much better.
Mm.
Africa, on the other hand, and some parts of Asia are really lagging, and they
Mm.
need a lot of help. And if we don't do that, we are going to pay a price every time like this. So I
Mm.
think we need to start thinking in bigger terms. And unless we do that, I think we are going to have this conversation again and again.
But this, at least this Omicron thing, once it dies down, everybody gets exposed, maybe herd immunity, maybe towards the
Well,
middle of the
yeah.
year.
See, that's exactly what I said after the Delta wave. In June, I had said next 6 months I don't expect any major waves, and I expect a honeymoon period. After that, I can't say is what I had said in June, and it's going to be very similar. We are going to have another honeymoon period where people try to feel that it's come to as low a problem as possible. It's going to come to as close as normalcy as we can think of. Travel will improve, commerce will improve, a lot of things will improve. But having said that, the chance of a new variant breaking through is never going to be too far away. Like I said, as long as vaccination levels remain really poor in most parts of the world. So I think we'll still have to keep looking over our shoulder. We'll still have to keep sequencing. We'll still have to keep studying. Unless it's a multi-pronged effort, I think it's going to remain a challenge.
Sounds good. So, do you have time for one last question? I keep asking you.
Sure.
Long COVID, sir. I think people want to know about it. Hair fall. Rahul is talking about hair fall. But do you have a long COVID clinic, or what do you guys see? We have a long COVID clinic, and we see like all kinds of symptoms.
Absolutely. See, we've seen a lot of inflammatory symptoms in our long COVID. We've had arthritis and things like that happening. We've had people who have lost their sense of taste and smell for a prolonged period of time. We've had quite a few different problems happening. So, unfortunately, in India, the focus has always been on acute care because we had a massive second wave and then we had the massive fungal problem and things like that. So, everybody was focused on that. Nobody was focusing on the long COVID syndrome. And, you're just running from crisis to crisis kind of thing. But yes, we do have a significant number of people who do struggle for a significant period of time after recovering from COVID. We know a couple of things. Number one, the more severe the COVID, the more likely you're to develop long COVID, meaning people who have mild COVID and sit at home are less likely to develop long COVID as compared to people who come to the hospital. So we are following our hospital survivors very closely. And we do a lot of things like physical therapy and things like that. And I think that is important. When you recover from COVID from a hospital, you do need to invest in physical therapy and also in having good ventilation of your thoughts and your ideas. Being in a hospital, especially in the COVID area, is very traumatic to say the least. From a psychological point of view, it is pretty horrendous. So, you need them to be able to have good social frameworks for them to ventilate all of that. And also, we need to look at the physical parts of it, which is the loss of taste and arthritis and things like that. With a, what shall I say, tailored approach like that, a lot of people can get a lot of relief. Data from this part of the world is actually sadly lacking in this. And yes, remember, hair fall can happen with any severe illness. It's not necessarily related to COVID. Remember that the only part of the hair which is alive is your hair root, which is inside. And when you're ill, the hair which grows out at that time is generally very, very fragile and brittle. So when it comes out, it'll break off and fall. But that hair generally tends to grow back again. But for some time, you may be left looking with maybe I could do with some hair.
Looking like Indian Kamal's hairstyle.
I can't go out and get a haircut. Oh my God, I'm sweating like it's too painful. Anyway, but the point is that yes, the good news is many of these things do tend to settle down over time. And no, I would just say wait it out. It's only question of time.
It's your question. Okay, sounds good, sir. So again, thanks, Deepak, for joining us as well. Again, sir, just for my audience, Dr. Subra was my mentor when I was doing my infectious rotation, and you can see how good he is in teaching people. And I'm here because one of the main reasons is him as well. But anyways, thank you so much. Despite being positive for COVID, despite being in the recovery phase, thank you for spending your time with us and educating us.
Absolutely. No, I think you're doing fantastic work. It's nice to see that you're supporting your motherland in different ways. And I think what you're doing is an underserved area. And unfortunately, it's not something that is glamorous and catches everybody's attention. But you know what? It is absolutely critical. There is a growing recognition for that kind of service, and most hospitals shy away from it because it doesn't look very good for them on their portfolio. But it is what we need.
It is what we
So I
need.
think you're doing some. I'm very happy to see that you've taken it on and you're doing this as a collaborative effort with all your colleagues.
Right.
I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you so much, sir. We are 1 hour and 30 minutes into this conversation. There are like 500 people watching, sir. This has been the best.
Always fun.
Anyways,
Always fun talking to
thank you
you.
so much. And please recover faster. We need your help.
Let's see. God willing, we'll all be out of this fairly soon. But let's just take it one step at a time, and let's always remember the basics in terms of Dr. VSH. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
VSH. I know. Hari is a great friend, and in fact, he was my first patient with critical COVID. I remember May of 2020 when he was admitted under me. He had full faith in me, and he came to me and said, "Sir, I know you will take care of me." I wasn't sure what I was doing. I spent sleepless nights. I remember one Saturday night specifically, I just felt very unhappy. So I drove across and spent most of the night with him. Great guy, and he's now the bulwark of my COVID team. And I'm just happy to see there are so many people across India who are doing fantastic work. Not just India, all over the world, who have answered the call and said, you know what, I want to stand up to be counted. This is what separates the men from the guy from boys. And you don't need to be holding a gun to be a hero. Armed forces guys, great guys, but we can all be everyday heroes in our own place of work, and we can do our bit to be a hero in the society. So let's just be our own heroes, and let's just be safe.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry, guys. There are lots of other chat questions as well. We have to wrap this up. Again, thank you so much for your time, sir.
My pleasure. Take care. Stay safe.
Bye.